Greetings, friends, and welcome. I am Ambakisye-Okang, the host of Say the kmtyw Towards Pan-Afrikan Economics, a weekly podcast and video program dedicated to making plain the economic dimensions of the lives of Africans of the continent and the global African diaspora. And I am coming to you with today's Pan-Afrikan Dispatch concerning Afrocentricity and Pan-Afrikanism. From a Pan-African perspective, Afrocentricity emphasizes the required spiritual, cognitive, affective, psychomotor constructs of behavior by global Africans to achieve African power and sustainable economic development. In order for the global African to be Pan-African, their thought process must be Afrocentric. That is, they must conceive and interact with the world on African cultural terms. To put the point more succinctly, just as the great ancestors of Nile Valley civilization stated that one must be, think, speak, and do ma'at, so to be Pan-African, one must be Afrocentric mentally, which is to say, one must be, think, and do as a global African defined by African cultural thought, moving according to the best interests of Black people as defined by African tradition. It is, as Professor Molefi Asante wrote, in her book, The Afrocentric Paradigm, Ama Mazama explains that Afrocentricity is not merely a worldview, nor even a theory as such, but rather it is a paradigm that results in the reconceptualization of the social and historical reality of African people. Actually, what she suggests is that the Afrocentric paradigm is a revolutionary shift in thinking proposed as a constructural adjustment to Black disorientation, decenteredness, and lack of agency. Keeping Ama Mazama's words in mind, we can see that the current nation-states of Africa and the Caribbean and the internal colony of Blacks of the United States, those of the UK and France, are politically and economically disoriented, decentered, and lack autonomous political and economic agency. Pan-Afrikanism is a cultural, political, economic, and military unification and liberation movement of global Africans on behalf of the beautiful ones not yet born, and it is an ancestor-inspired political, economic, and cultural grassroots movements of global Africans. In the words of Chinwezu Ubekwe, Pan-Afrikanism is for effecting salutary changes in the lives of the persons and societies of the Black race. A movement whose mission is to liberate the Black race from its alien conquerors and exploiters and humiliators. A movement whose task is to organize and lead the Black race to victory in the race war that Caucasian aggressors, both Arab and European, have inflicted on the Black race for several millennia now. Therefore, Pan-Afrikanism involves the cognitive recalibration of the global African to ensure community cohesiveness and continuation. The global African, in order to constantly maintain a path guided by the ancestors and infused with ma'at, poses to themselves questions which illustrate operationalized Afrocentric critical and analytical thought. These questions are: have I, as an African who is conscious of myself as a Black African, substantively located the African problem in African spiritual, cultural, social, historical, political, and economic contexts? Have I, as an African who is conscious of myself as a Black African, approached the African problem with the African as subjective, independent agent operating from African cultural paradigms? Have I, as an African who is conscious of myself as a Black African, defined and defended the African cultural basis for African political and economic agency? Have I, as an African who is conscious of myself as a Black African, thoroughly refined the lexicology utilized so as to reflect a respect for African cultural reality? Have I, as an African who is conscious of myself as a Black African, unambiguously delineated the utility of the act under consideration to the solving of African problems? And that ends today's Pan-Afrikan Dispatch. In the spirit of the ancestors, Aluta Continua, Pamoja Tutashinda.